So if you did see the previous notification, apologies for that. I had to delete that because I still have my AirPods in and it'll interfere with my microphone. So anyway, welcome. Today, I'm going to talk about mental models and developing mental models and then reusing those mental models. So they're like little rules and little routines, you could say, that you're going to build into yourself that you can reuse later. So they're like rehearsed skills, you could say. But these, when you think about a mental model, you don't want it too rigid in terms of its application. So you don't want it applying too narrowly. There are some things that you might do in terms of your career or whatever that may be quite narrow, right? Let's say you're in a complete niche and it's very narrow, then you might have some mental models that are very specific, aimed at getting better results, like little routines for that. But generally, I'm talking about reusable mental models here. They're quite a bit higher level, and they can be applied in many areas. So, firstly, I just recorded a sort of a long form on this on the whiteboard. So I'm going to release it probably tomorrow. So there's a lot of detail. I'm not going to talk specifically about each of these mental models because I did it in that video. So I'll talk about each one. So look out for the video. It'll be coming out tomorrow. And I'll explain every single one of these 7 mental models there and how they are so generic that they basically can be applied to multiple different scenarios. Sits on that. What does that mean? Yeah. But just an idea, like you know, I've done a video on this. I did it last summer. If you look in my past videos from last summer, I did one on how to think from first principles, and you could say that that's a mental model because thinking from first principles is going back to basics. It's generic. Something that's the example I gave there was like the area of a circle, which is very, very mathematical first principles. And now how that could be applied to so many different niches in life. That's what I mean by mental models. So one of the mental models that I explain, which in the video I'll release tomorrow, there's kind of there's 7 mental models and there's 2 sides to it. One side, 3 of them are all about improving your communication, because I do believe that being able to communicate, I think this was, somebody asked Warren Buffett what is, the single biggest skill that he would recommend that anyone learn. I think people were expecting him to say, oh, like learn how to trade stocks or whatever, something really related to business like that. And he turned around and he said, learn how to communicate, learn communication, right? And I believe the same. I think learning communication and human psychology is a fundamental skill that everyone should do if you ever want to get anywhere in life. Because if you think about every single interaction that you have, right, whether it's personal, professional, hobbies, anything that you're trying to do, whether it's your work or in your personal life with family or romantic interests, involves some level of communication, right? And that's why I think developing your emotional intelligence and your communication skills, you cannot do enough of it. And so there's all sorts of things that you can do here. Obviously, read about emotional intelligence and things like that, which I promote. So you can go and have a look on my reading list if you want some examples there. But there's also ways to practice and use certain mental models. And in the video I'll do tomorrow, I'll explain about things like the buyer-seller dynamic, understanding who's a buyer, who's a seller, and where the power shift is in any communication, and how that applies to both. Like it can apply to dating, it can apply to, say, professional in your work, And it's there's a really important set of skills here. You might have, if any have watched my video, my Mark Manson models review, I explain there, the stuff that Mark Manson's teaching about communicating with women from a guy's perspective. I mean, it goes the other way around, but that stuff I found very applicable in business too. The non-neediness that he's explaining, developing a non-neediness, is also applicable in the business world. I would call that imposter syndrome. And you can, when you get good at reusing mental models, the idea is that you can cross disciplines and reuse the same thing. So it's a really, but understanding communication. So just like having the ability to go and speak to someone on the street, a random stranger, or in a coffee shop, and not be afraid of that. Just striking up a normal conversation with a human that you've never met is a great way to enhance your social skills, your emotional intelligence, and even in just doing that stuff, it really helps you in business too. I remember my coach saying that I should go and learn such things as just talking to people on the street. Even things like, if you've ever seen Cold Approach, which is like a dating pickup skill, learn that. Just go and speak to someone on the street like that, broad daylight. What I found with just mastering that as a skill, it helps you in business. It rounds you off socially. So it's very, very important. Communication is a massive mental model. So go and understand how to communicate. And then there's other things. I did a video. I've done a few videos recently and a couple of articles on understanding dark triad traits, which I'm not promoting that you should become an absolute arsehole and learn dark triad. I mean, I have, but I think understanding it so that you can actually spot it and make sure you're not going to get manipulated yourself is a huge skill. And then learning things like what I learned from Scott, which is things like advanced sort of emotional intelligence skills for negotiating, like active listening, understanding how to make someone feel seen, heard, and understood, right? So that if you ever go into a negotiation, if you go in all defensive with your fucking wall up and they're the same, you just end up with this kind of stalemate where no one's going to give up any ground, or you might get some ground, but it's reluctant. You know what I mean? The better way is to influence someone. It's like the carrot and the stick, isn't it, or whatever. I did a few videos on Machiavellianism, right? And the original Niccolo Machiavelli book was, Niccolo Machiavelli wrote that book, The Prince it's called, and he wrote it for the rulers, the Italian rulers, and teach them how to rule over the people. And it was quite a lot of nasty tactics. It was quite brutal, actually. He was saying that sometimes you need to drive fear into the people to get them to behave how you want them to. Now, that's one tactic. Another way of doing it is to get people to change through influence. And that's where active listening comes in, because what you're doing there is you're making sure the other person is seen, heard, and understood first before you try to influence them into your way of thinking. Because most people have I think Tony Robbins talks about this. A lot of people, when you speak to them, they have a primary need. There's like 6 human needs or whatever. And most people, a lot of people, when in business meetings, I find a lot of people, because in the business context, everyone wants to be, it's like a big pissing contest. And a lot of people just want to feel significant, right? They want to feel like they're being listened to and that they're important. And as long as you give them that, and the way you do that with active listening is things like making sure that you listen to them, and then using things like minimal encouragers to keep them going. And then you've got to, like, when they say something, it's good to just paraphrase it back to them, right? Because that then suggests that you're understanding their worldview. You might not necessarily agree to it. And this is also the difference between a lot of people get empathy confused, because empathy is, if you think about empathy, empathy is about understanding the other person, right? It's not the same as compassion. Compassion is where you feel sorry for someone, and this is where people get it confused. So when you're using active listening, you're making sure you understand the other person. You're demonstrating through things like paraphrasing that you understand the other person. Doesn't necessarily mean you agree with them. So you're not, you don't have to be compassionate with them. You're just demonstrating that you've heard them. And then once you've done that, you can then convince them. So that's why I think that communication skill and those communication techniques are so important as a mental model. And then obviously the other, I provide in my video some more practical mental models. So things like how to start a business. I've done a video, I think I put it in the link down below. How to start a business. You need 4 things really. And it doesn't matter what business it is. I think you can apply these 4 things as a mental model. Make sure you're passionate about it. Otherwise, you just lose interest before you get successful. Make sure that you've got some kind of unique skill or product, something that not many people can do. Because the reason why you're doing that, it wants to be difficult enough that you don't end up in a race to the bottom, basically. A race to the bottom is where there's just shitloads of copycats and people, and you're just in a bidding war, just slashing your prices, race to the bottom. You don't want to be in that scenario. Then you need to understand things like leverage, right? So like real leverage, leveraging technology, leveraging media, not leveraging people, which is just selling time for money. I talk about that in my video a lot, and in other videos. That's not what you want to do, because it's non-scalable. And then finally, you want to, I wrote down, oh yeah, you want full accountability. So this is a big one as a mental model, really. Accountability is quite big. Make sure you're accountable in your life for the upsides and the downsides, right? In everything. It's going really dark here, isn't it? So you want to make sure that you're accountable for all the upsides and all the downsides in life. And that means whatever happens, you're responsible. And when you make a break and say go self-employed or something like this is how a lot of people can slip up, because they don't want to take the risk. Now, if you can't take the risk on the upside, you think leaving a job, it's like that's the most safest thing. No, being in a PAYE job is not actually that safe, because you're not in control of your own outcomes. So I always think personal accountability is always better, right, if you can do it, because then you have what I always talk about, personal sovereignty, and you're living life on your terms. You're living life on your terms if you've got full accountability for it, right? So that means you're responsible for all the upsides and all the downsides in life. And that's what you really want to do. That's why you want to develop these reusable mental models. Another big one was about marketing and understanding things like organic SEO and things like this. These are just skills that if you get down, like, you can market any product or service. If you understand the difference between organic SEO and paid, things like pay-per-click, understand why you need to run both, but you want your organic taking over eventually once it gets moving. Understanding the difference between inbound marketing and outbound marketing. These are like general skills in no matter what you choose to do in life, you're always going to have to market something and get some sales. So yeah, go and have a look at the links I've sent down below. Like I say, tomorrow I've got the full video on this coming out, so make sure you subscribe. and then you'll get the notification. If not, just check back in tomorrow and I will have the full video there with all 7 mental models that you should master. And if you were to master all them mental models, no matter what you do in life, you'll be smashing it. You'll be killing it, right? Just because you're prepared to internalize those reusable mental models. All right, I'm going to get going. Take it easy. See you all next time.